What if plants could walk like animals? Have you ever looked at a tree and wondered, what if it suddenly pulled its roots out of the ground and started walking? It sounds like something from a science fiction movie, but imagine if every plant on Earth could move from one place to another just like animals. Forests would no longer stay in one location. Flowers could wander across fields. Giant trees might slowly march toward rivers, while tiny grasses could spread across entire landscapes overnight. Would our world become more beautiful or much more dangerous? Let's imagine what Earth would be like if plants could move and travel just like animals. At first, this ability might seem like a huge advantage for plants. Today, most plants spend their entire lives rooted in one place. If conditions become too dry, too cold, or too dark, they cannot simply leave. They must survive where they are or die trying. But in a world where plants could move, everything would change. Imagine a sunflower waking up every morning and walking toward the brightest sunlight instead of waiting for the sun to move across the sky. Large oak trees could slowly migrate toward rivers during droughts. Desert plants could escape the hottest areas and seek cooler environments. Tropical plants might climb mountains to avoid rising temperatures caused by climate change. Instead of adapting to nature, plants would actively chase the best places to live. This would dramatically increase their chances of survival. But movement requires energy. Animals burn calories from food to power their muscles. Plants normally create energy through photosynthesis using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. If plants needed to walk, they would need much more energy than photosynthesis alone could provide. Perhaps they would evolve new ways of collecting nutrients. Some plants might absorb more minerals from the soil before moving. Others might become partly carnivorous, capturing insects or even small animals to gain extra energy. Suddenly, the line between plants and animals would begin to blur. Now imagine forests. Today, forests stay where they have grown for hundreds or even thousands of years. But if trees could walk, forests themselves might migrate across continents. Every autumn, instead of birds flying south for warmer weather, entire forests might slowly travel toward warmer climates. During spring, they could return north. Satellite images would show giant green masses moving across countries year after year. People might wake up one morning to discover that the forest near their town had disappeared overnight, and another completely different forest had arrived. Animals would have to constantly follow these moving habitats. Many species depend entirely on certain trees for food and shelter. If the trees moved away, the animals would have little choice but to follow them. Entire ecosystems would become mobile. Predators, prey, insects, birds, fungi, and microorganisms would all migrate together with the forests. Nature would never stand still. Cities would also face incredible challenges. Imagine planting a beautiful tree in your front yard, only to find it gone the next morning because it decided to search for richer soil elsewhere. Public parks would need fences, not to keep animals out, but to stop the trees from wandering into busy streets. Farmers might wake up to discover their cornfields had walked into neighboring farms. Even worse, weeds would become nearly impossible to control. Instead of waiting for seeds to spread, invasive plants could simply walk directly into new environments. Some species might move hundreds of miles every year, overwhelming native ecosystems much faster than they do today. Agriculture would become a daily battle. Farmers might need GPS trackers on their crops. Imagine rice plants deciding they preferred another field, or apple trees slowly marching toward nearby rivers because they found the soil more fertile there. Food production would become unpredictable. Scientists would likely develop special technologies to communicate with plants or encourage them to stay in designated areas. Perhaps farmers would even train their crops like pets. But the biggest changes might happen in the oceans. Marine plants such as kelp and seagrass could drift with purpose instead of simply growing where conditions allowed. They could avoid polluted waters, escape storms, or search for better sunlight. Coral reefs, although coral itself is made of animals, might eventually become surrounded by constantly moving underwater forests. Entire marine ecosystems could relocate when ocean temperatures changed. This ability might help many species survive climate change much better than they do today. But moving plants could also become dangerous. Imagine walking through a forest at night when a giant tree quietly changes direction and blocks your path. Picture thorn bushes surrounding hikers, or poisonous plants following animals because they have learned that animals unknowingly fertilize the soil. Some plants might even compete aggressively for sunlight. Instead of growing taller than neighboring trees, they might simply push competitors away. Large forests could fight for territory. Imagine watching two groups of giant trees slowly collide as each tries to occupy the most fertile valley. It would look almost like armies moving across the landscape. Scientists would likely study plant behavior much like they study animal behavior today. Do plants have personalities? Do they cooperate? Do they compete? Do they form friendships? Interestingly, modern science has already discovered that plants are far more intelligent than most people realize. Plants can communicate through underground fungal networks. They can detect nearby competitors. Some release chemicals to warn neighboring plants about insect attacks. Others recognize relatives and even share nutrients. If plants already possess these remarkable abilities while standing still, imagine how much more complex they could become if they could move freely. Perhaps they would develop social groups. Perhaps old trees would protect younger ones by surrounding them. Maybe flowering plants would gather together in enormous colorful fields to attract more pollinating insects. Nature might become surprisingly organized. Humans would also need entirely new laws. Would moving plants have rights? Could someone own a tree if it chose to leave their property? What if a giant tree walked onto a highway and caused an accident? Would the tree be considered responsible, or would nature simply be unpredictable? Governments might establish plant migration corridors, similar to wildlife crossings today. Architects would design cities that allow trees to travel safely without damaging buildings. Schools might even teach children how to understand plant behavior. The economy would change as well. Companies could create mobile gardens that rearrange themselves automatically. Hotels might advertise forests that visit guests every season. Tourists would travel to watch the annual migration of giant forests, just as people today watch whales or wildebeest migrate. Yet despite all these exciting possibilities, one question remains. Would Earth actually be better if plants could move? At first, the answer seems obvious. Plants could escape disasters, survive climate change, and adapt much faster. But movement would also create endless competition for space, sunlight, water, and nutrients. Stable ecosystems that have evolved over millions of years could become chaotic. Animals might lose reliable habitats. Humans would struggle to farm, build cities, and protect natural environments. Sometimes, staying still is actually nature's greatest strength. The silent forests we know today provide stability for countless species. Their roots hold soil together, prevent erosion, store carbon, and create the ecosystems that support nearly all life on Earth. Perhaps plants don't need to walk because they already move in another way, through seeds carried by the wind, rivers, animals, and time itself. Their journey is slower than any animal's, but over centuries, it has transformed the entire planet. So the next time you walk through a quiet forest, remember this fascinating thought. Those trees may never take a single step, but if they ever did, the world we know would change forever.